Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Good morning. Buenos días. ¿Cómo están todos? Ya te he been in condition so in Navajo, in Spanish, and good mornings in English. So I guess really don't need a translator here because I'll be doing this in English. So it's really an honor to be here, especially to be asked by a good friend of mine, VINCI. I do go there every now and then, even though I live across town. So, but during our drinking days, I know we went to great lengths to party. You know, I went from Farmington to Albuquerque to LA to Phoenix, and I've been all over the world, you know, just to do this. So, in this program, I've been able to go to places that I've never been before. It's all within the area in the state of New Mexico called Area 46. So it amazes me that, you know, I'm standing before you as a sober man. You know, I've drank most of my life, most of my entire life. Today I'm 57 years old. And I kind of give you an idea that I've been sober for a little over 8 years. And thank you very much. Today I'm involved with service work. I do service work. I'm with the Taylor Ranch Fellowship. I think everybody knows where Taylor Ranch is. My very first meeting, I went there back in 2001, and that's where I stayed at because I didn't live too far from there, so that was very convenient for me to go there. And I remember back in 2001, I was asked to do meetings. If how serious I was about my sobriety, you know, are you ever going to sober up? Because, you know, you have multiple DUIs and all that. So it was brought to my attention as you need to do something about your life. You know, you need to make some changes in your life. You know, I never thought I'd sober up, to be honest with you. You know, it's something that has always been in the back of my mind. You know, so what about my drinking buddies? You know, what about, you know, those I hang out with, those I patronize and all that. You know, it didn't matter. You know, I made a good living. I made a good name for myself in the jewelry business to where I've always had money. You know, it was easy for me to go somewhere. You know, I know it wasn't the right thing to do. But I do know today was the addiction that I had to alcohol, you know, what it did to me. But I got involved with the program about a little over 3 years ago. I started my meetings, and I kept going back and back, and I was going through a period of my life where I really didn't know where I was headed. You know, is this something that is going to work for me? You know, what am I going to do? Where am I headed? I was met with a bunch of confusion, you know, and even though I went through a very strict program called drug court, it was best for me that, you know, that I went back to the meetings, and that's one of the biggest decision, the best decision I ever made was to go back to the meetings. And ever since I've been back, I did all the necessary, not necessary, but the volunteer work that, you know, we're all expected us to do, and then the service work, making coffee, setting up chairs and all that. And eventually I got set up to be a GSR for the group. Little did I know what I was getting myself into. And today I'm almost done with my term as a GSR. We have a 2-year term from our group. So, and that enabled me to go to places like I say, within the years, I've never been before. You know, I've never been to Bayard, and I've never been to Roswell, and I've been to some places. I've done those conventions and area assemblies, and I got involved with service work there, and They got me involved with the corrections and treatment and breach the gap committees, and I enjoy working with those people. They made a difference in my life, and has opened my eyes even more to my understanding. This is maybe I should have been doing this a long time ago. But I think all of you understand that this is all voluntary work. Nobody has to tell me that I have to go here, go there. Even today I do anywhere from 2 to 3 meetings a week, and it's all voluntary. I feel good going to the meetings, and I feel better coming out of the meetings. You always pick up something from the meetings. And it surprised me that I'm standing before you, even though I'm 8 years sober. I heard Jim S. Talk last night. These guys have a lot of years sobriety. I really, I enjoy those guys, the old timers. I'm an old timer myself, 57 years old, but I don't have that many years sobriety. So, but still, I'm here. My message today is to tell you that that somebody like me, it's been out there all these years, can change and can make a difference in somebody's life. And I know some people here are most of you might have maybe 3 months or maybe less than a year or 2 years, that there's still a good chance to make changes in your life. And when you do make those changes, you'll see the difference. It's like day and night. I did a 180-degree turn, in my life. I carried a lot of resentment all these years. I did things my way. It never worked. I've been in so many troubles before. It just never worked. I continued to do the things my way, and that's part of the reason I left. I left home a long time ago, and I'm one of those guys that was raised in the boarding schools. All 12 years of my life was spent in boarding schools. And the reason being, was my parents couldn't afford me, and they had to work out of state. And that's part of the reason I ended up in the boarding school. I've learned how to be independent in the boarding school. I was told to do things. You were told to do things, you have to do it. It's like being in the service. Yes, sir, and all that. What you spoken your own language, you were being punished. You're not allowed to see your parents. All of that. Working on weekends or standing in the hallway all night. I went through all of that. And I've learned to be very independent. I learned how to cook in high school, doing my own laundry and all that. And after I graduated, I never wanted to go home because there was nothing there for me. I saw things that were, I think the old saying is true, is, there's greener pastures on the other side of the mountain. But I never knew I'd be laying in one of those pastures, But there I was, I went to UNM, all I did was drink there, partied. I went to Paris to study there. That's all I did, I could have finished there. I would have gotten an art degree there, but I never made it. And that's one of my biggest regret in life is that, that I never finished my education. I was a big letdown to my family, especially my mom. One day after I sober up, I went home and I saw my mom, I never knew she had aged that much. I saw the wrinkle and then tears, and God, that killed me. I've been away for so long. I used to hate like the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Because when I go home, there was no liquor there. I come from a Christian home, and to do that was that's it still it kills me. When I think about that. But today I constantly remind myself, these were the people that loved me, that supported me, no matter what, And I always remind myself today that I am somebody, that I'm somebody's father. I have 2 boys, that I'm somebody's son. I'm somebody's friend. That I heard a good saying somewhere along the line that, that don't let something tragic happen or drastic happen in order for you to stop drinking, that if you still have a chance to sober up, today might be a good day to do so, I started one day at a time. I have a sponsor that I picked from the very first day, and he told me this is a one day at a time situation. You can do it. And I didn't do it on my own. I got to thank the drug court and APD to get me through my first year. It's like most PGA golfers would say, if they ever win a golf tournament, so I like to thank Tiger Woods because he didn't play in that tournament. So, but in this case, in this case, it's I got pulled over in the year 2000. That wasn't my first time. And for some reason, we all go through this, I guess most of us, I had this terrible feeling that something bad was going to happen to me. I knew it already, I knew it already that, it's just a gut feeling I have, the instinct that I have, things wasn't going to go right in my life in the year 2000. And I remember that year says, I was going against all odds, saying, this is the year of the dragon, I'm a dragon, no matter what, I'll make it big this year. I was supposed to get married that year, and I got pulled over, and I wasn't being honest with myself about it. At that time my fiance left me, and the IRS got me to put a lien on my account, so everything just caved in on me. That's where I said, says, I'm done. And I've always wondered how people get to the point where they talk about suicide. I've always said, how do people get that way? What makes them get to that point in their life? And I thought about, and I don't know. I cried that the next day. I was only a block away from the house when I got pulled over, and I cried the next day. Says, this is it. This is the end of the road for me. And I really had no control of my life at the time because the alcohol, the addiction, was carrying on my life. And one of the family members took me home and says, you need to go back to your roots. And that there's a lady that can help you. She's a medicine lady. She's very good at this, And I don't know how much money I paid her, but I know she emptied my wallet. So, and it was an old lady that I met. I believe she was like in her 80s or something like that. And I explained to her what my situation was. Oh, that lady completely scolded me, chewed me out. I mean, I've never seen an old lady. I knew what she was talking about in Navajo, says, the terms are, what the hell, is wrong with you? What the hell is wrong with you kids? What's wrong with you guys? The only time you guys need the help is, when you're in trouble with alcohol, with drugs. Why can't it be something nice where, that will benefit your life, your family, things like that? And I was afraid to ask her for a refund, so but I knew she was I knew she was going to kill me. So, and that kind of like opened my eyes a little, So if you're real serious about this, about changing your life, you need to stop drinking for at least 3 months. Respect what I'm going to tell you. Respect what I'm going to do for you. And I remember just like Jim Mess last night, he went to the top of the hill, and I walked with her to the top of the hill. I was like, 40 years younger than her. I had to wait and stop to catch my breath, and she was still ahead of me by 20 yards. So, and but it was a very good experience for me, to be able to go back to my roots. Like I said, I was raised as a Christian, but my father was very traditional. But I lost my dad back in 1971 to cancer, working the uranium mines up in Colorado. So I really had nobody to look up to, that will, lead me the way. But I know my mom did her very best to take us as far as she can, But again, like I said, I was being very, very disrespectful. I still owe it to her in a lot of ways, because she was the one that helped me with my trip when I studied art in Paris, And I went back to UNM. I never finished there. I never finished. Today I hear in the news people getting their degrees, high school degrees or college degrees in their 80s and 90s. So maybe I know I still have a chance. So, but I don't want to wait until I get there. So, but I have a very, very interesting life. I was born in 1952, and from the earliest of my memories, all we did was we're like nomads. It depended on where my dad worked at. We moved here and there, to Colorado in certain areas, Grand Junction, up that way towards Telluride area, Cortez and Moab and all that. That's where all the mines were. And I had the experience of, I was aware that, I'm not going to see my parents sometimes a year at a time, but boarding school was my way of life. I had new friends there, and we did our ways, and we played our sports, football, basketball, softball, and there was really nobody there to control us, so we drank. After each game, high school, basketball, that we drank. I had an uncle that used to come by and pick us up, and that's all we did on weekends. And that was a part of a life. And going back to Gateway, Colorado, quite a few years ago, I think it was in my sophomore year or something. The mine works were done by shift works, 3 shifts a day, 24 hours. And one of those shifts, my father was working from 3 to 12 or something like that. And the men, they would get together and play softball after each work. And I remember my dad going to work and played softball, and I met up with my uncle. We went to Grand Junction, got drunk, came back, and I had passed out in front of the little house there. I remember my dad was so upset with me, says, this alcohol that you use is abusive. It's not the way to go. I've done that before, you know that, and it's going to cost you one of these days. I always remember that. But I didn't learn very much, but I kept on doing it. And I've been in 2 car accidents. I've been in the hospital. I spent 1 week in Gallup, another 3 days in Shiprock, all due to drinking and driving. I could have lost my life the first time. I had a fractured neck. I broke my ankle and things like that. Had a bunch of scratches here and there, all due to drinking. And that's why I keep saying, says people don't believe me that I'm sober today. 8 years, and I still can't believe that. Sometimes I have to look in the mirror and say, wow, here I am sober 1 day at a time, And as I always say that, people like me can change. I had a good, I have a very good sponsor. I have a very good group, that are very supportive. And that's what I like about AA is that, you walk into the doors and immediately you see, you have the warm reception. The hugs, the handshakes, welcome and all that. And that's what I like about AA, Even in service work, it's like that. You have a very close relationship with each other, Everybody knows about, what they're going through, and they're very supportive, Anything little thing, that's going to go bad to me or I have negative thoughts, people are there to help me. When I don't understand something that, that I always ask questions. I've never done that before, I make sure that I understand, what I'm going through and what I'm about to go through. And that's part of the reason why I do a lot of step 10, personal inventory. I make sure that, that, I do, what I'm not supposed to do. Before, it didn't matter. I went about my ways, I never got anywhere with it. I had to carry a lot of resentment, I carried a lot of anger, and that wasn't good. I knew it, but I did it anyway. I had my own rules. Let's put it that way. And when I got pulled over, they assigned me with a probation officer, and I was looking at jail time, and that was the one thing I never wanted to do was jail. Even though I've been in jail before, I don't remember this lady's name, but she was very mean to me, And I don't know why. I was trying to cooperate as much as I can, And she asked me, says there's this program called drug court, and it says there might be a good chance you might sober up there. They might change your drinking ways. I think the way looking at your record, you're an alcoholic. You have multiple DUIs and so forth. And he asked me, what do I think? So I said, I really don't know. So yeah, maybe it's good for me. He says, if this program is not for you, then you're looking at a good, maybe 6 months, maybe 90 days. And I said, but I want you to be very, very sincere about this, if this is going to be good for you. And I didn't know what to say. I was speechless. And then she asked me, says, I don't see no tears. I didn't know I was supposed to cry. I wasn't too sure what I was going to do. And I thought about, I said, what is that one movie that always makes me cry, I had to think about this real quick. We're looking at 5 seconds, and to be honest with it, the only movie that comes to mind was Dumb and Dumber. Oh my! I was trying to. I was trying to remember the movie Titanic or something like that, but it's the only movie I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at that time. But somehow I convinced her that that this program would be good for me. But she got me to the program, and it was very, very strict, very, very strict. The first it was I did the program in 10 months. It was the first 3 months. We go through random P tests and all that, and 2 times a week went to court, 2 times a month, and we had to check in with the probation officer. We had to go to class, and it was enough to get my 2-year degree. Because I went to class Monday 2 hours, Tuesday 4 hours. We had to go through acupuncture, and it was very hard. We had to be on time. If you were 5 minutes late, there was absolutely no excuse. Even at court, you had no excuse. One guy showed up with a Budweiser T-shirt. He had to start all over. He had to start a program all over. And I've seen a lot of people play the part in there. And from the very beginning, I said, well, I'll just play the part, go through the program, go back with my drinking ways. But little did I know that it was beginning the changes that was going to happen in my life, because the assignment that were given to us was based on the 12-step and then the Bible and then why we drink. It doesn't have to be that way. As an artist, I know that. So I've been to quite a few art shows, and a lot of times I've been to places, Aspen, you name it, Sedona, Scottsdale. I take my work with me, try to sell. And sometimes I get in an argument with people that do run the gallery. I expect them to buy from me. That's what I wanted. Even if they did, the next day I'd be broke anyway. So, it was always drinking, always partying wherever I went. And that's what I learned, how to deal with your frustration, your anger, your resentment. And we had good counselors in there. I had to go through four counselors in there. And that really changed my life, what happened to me, what were the consequences. I think most of you know that they've been involved with a program like that. So. And when I found out that how much it cost me my last DUI, $5,200. How much it cost me? That's my fine, everything. We had to pay for our school and all that. So, but I made it. I I was determined to make it. I think halfway through the program, so I really decided, so you know what? I never looked at it this way. To actually see it in black and white was a big difference in my life. Why I was doing, why did I did that, what's going to happen to me now, so really, I got personal with the counselors, what's going to happen to me? What am I supposed to do now? Where's it going to take me? And they were very, very helpful, in a lot of ways, that's what they were there for. And I got out of there, and we went through this graduation at the courthouse. I remember when it was Judge Baca, Marie Baca, we went to go see. So, and I've always wondered, are we going to have caps and gowns over there? And if they did, would it be in black and white stripes? So with your ABQ number on there, that was. But I didn't want to say it because they might start me from the very beginning again. So. But I went and did some very, very crazy things in my life. I'm not too proud of that. But I drank off and on for more than almost 30 years, and the longest I've been sober was 2 years, and that's when I was still married. I got married in 1977, got divorced in 1986, and I was put. It's either the band or me. That's what I was told. And that was the only time I really sober up, and life was good then. I don't know why I continue that. And there are periods in my life where I stayed sober 30 days at a time, 2 months, 3 months. And I always remember those times. My dark days, I don't remember them, And I decided to sober up in 1986. And I was doing really well. I think I went like 3-4 months, and And I remember my wife telling me at the time, so you know what? You're not fun anymore. So you want me to go back drinking? So maybe it's best. I got divorced anyway, either way or not. So I ended up by myself. And the hardest thing out of this was that she met somebody else, and she was going through some personal problems, and I took on upon myself to raise my own boys. My younger one wasn't even I think it was like 3.5 years old when I started raising them. That was one of the hardest things I ever did, and I went and say I can do this. I've done, I've made, I love challenges, but this was a little different for me because I wasn't there most of the time, so maybe it's best I'm there for my boys this time. So I did that for so many years until they graduated from high school, and the other one graduated from UC Irvine. And one of the things that I did with them was I told them from the very beginning that the sports that they were going to get themselves involved with would be a good thing for them to do would be golf, because I've been golfing since 1980, and I got them into the golfing program as juniors. So we did a lot of junior PGAs and all that, and that took us on the road. My son knows is one of the thing that he didn't like about this was how I drank, and I depended on him driving ever since he was like probably in 8th grade or 9th grade. And he didn't like that. We did a tournament in Aspen. We went straight to by Dallas, played another tournament, and I drank all the way back, and he drove me all the way back. So I put a lot of pressure on him. I think about that. Why did I do those things? I could have been a better father. I could have been a better role model for them, but But people say I did a real good job with my own two boys, raising them like that. But little did they know that, there was a lot of drinking that was involved. And I'm really glad, that my boys are not like me today, My oldest son got his degree, and he's working with in Fort Lauderdale area, a place called Weston, Florida. And he works at a really nice place out there, Bonaventure Country Club. He's an assistant head professional there. I'm very, very proud of him. Very, very proud of him. My second son, he was a better golfer. He went to Junior World twice in San Diego, where all the best golfers in the world play. And I had a lot of plans for him. I want you to do this, do that. But he gave it up. I don't know why he gave it up. He just walked away from the sport and tried to come back and continue. He never made it. And I feared that, the worst for him, because I thought maybe in a way he was going to turn out like me, start running all that. But he kept himself together. And he moved to Florida also, and he started working there with the Seminole tribe there. And this is what surprised me is that, today he's a director of logistics for the Seminole Hollywood Police Department. Heads a staff of 14 people. So how did that happen? What did I do, But he did it on his own. Like I said, I'm glad. I could not ask for better boys than the two that I have. I'm really glad that they never turned out like me, even though I had a lot of bad experience with them. I know they hated me for a lot of things that I've done, which I wasn't there for them. And every time I try to do good, it seems like it wasn't good enough, because I think like I did it at the wrong time. Like I was down here in Albuquerque one time, and I made some sales, and I had to get back right away because I was trying to get back before the boys got out of school. And somebody had mentioned to me that, so what are you going to do for Halloween? I says, I don't know. Says maybe go somewhere, or go hang out with some bar or somewhere. And I remember my boys. Oh yeah, I need to get back. It's Halloween. And I drove like crazy all the way back to Shiprock. And I had the two boys watching TV there, watching cartoon or something. I get after my oldest son, says, what are you doing? Get up, get your son dressed up. It's Halloween. Paint his face or do something. And they looked at me like, what's going on here? And I got after them. They were afraid to talk to me, I got them dressed up and chased them out of the house. And they came back about an hour later, they had potatoes and bananas and tortillas and I look in their bag and I says, "What is this?" "Dad, Halloween is tomorrow." That's, these are the things that I did. So next day I took him out of town, up to Farmington somewhere. So I remember one of the guys getting after me. He says, "What the hell are you doing? Tonight your kid's a day earlier." Because we live in an apartment complex, so everybody kind of knows each other there. So those are the things that I did. And I know it wasn't good, but, this is, in a way, I think I still did my best. And today it's different, way, way different. I'm very cautious of the things that I do. I make sure. One of the things I really confront myself is that whenever I run across a friend, says, "Let's go hang out. Let's go get a beer or something." I said, "No," I can't do that. So I've been sober. So, "What? You?" Of all people, you? And I said, "No, yes, I've been sober. For a while now. Come on, I'll buy you a beer." I think those of most of you know that they just turn their back on you. I can have a Coke with you, but they don't want to take that. They take off from you. And I had a friend that worked for me for a while, and he did the same thing, just took off from me. Says, "I can have a Coke with you or something, or a beverage, iced tea or something." He says, "Nope, that's not good enough." But that's the way it goes when you're an alcoholic. And it didn't matter. I started my jewelry in 1980. And I made a good name for myself because I was working with people that were very well known already, and they taught me the trade and all that. So it was easy for me to go to places where I knew that people would buy from me. And I found, I won my first best of show in jewelry in 1981. And little did I know there was a check waiting for me. It was there for 6 months. We went on a vacation to San Diego. Come back through Flagstaff. We stopped at the gallery at the Northern Arizona Museum. I asked that lady, and I said, "That's my work there. I did that." So wait a second here. I got something for you. They brought out a ribbon and a check for $1,000. Nobody told me that I won. Somebody had purchased my work and decided to enter my work at the time. So, and ever since then, I've won 3 best of shows, best in design, at various shows in Santa Fe, the Inner Market. The 8 Northern Pueblo, Galba, Intertribal, and all that. So when you make a name for yourself, it's very, very easy to get money. That was me. Back in the 80s, it was very easy. I did shows in Houston, in Denver, Aspen, Vail, all over the place. And the only reason I went there was because I wanted to drink. I wanted to party. There are people that I knew in the business that are very well known. That was the only thing that they did. So I was just... I think mostly it's just to be part of the crowd, just to that you're there for them also, and that's what I did. I never came home till about 2-3 days later, and when I did come home, it was like I catch the last plane that was coming out. It didn't matter how much it costs, and I've always wondered. We did our taxes in 1984, and this is quite unbelievable. I made $104,000 that year. I had nothing to show for. Absolutely nothing to show for. I did that again in 85. I had nothing to show for. And that's what amazes me, What was it, I knew, and now I know it was the alcohol. It was the addiction. It's just wanting to be out there and you wanted to go places. It's just, I took it one step too far. I think that's what I did. Farmington wasn't good enough. Albuquerque wasn't good enough. LA wasn't good enough. I went to Vegas, went to Oklahoma City, went to Philadelphia, went to New York, and, I wanted to see what was like there. I'm very intercultural too at the same time, so I wanted to meet other people. I went about it the wrong way by drinking, and that's all I did in the almost 30 years that I drank. And I wonder today, so what if, I always tell myself that, but I always say the serenity prayer too, you can't change what happened, but you have to deal with what's real today is, that you're sober, that I have friends that support me. My family never left me. I have friends that believe me from the business, that are setting up shows for me. You're doing the right thing now. Keep it up. And I was telling my friend Adriana over here that, so how come you don't do shows? I said every time I did shows, I went crazy. Excuse me, because I drank. I abused the money. And in November of last year, we did a show in the Gene Autry Museum in Los Angeles. And that was really the first time I really had that connection with the people that had purchased my work and people that had bought my work there. And I remember one lady came up to me and says, "I thought you were dead." No, I'm here, So whatever happened to you? Questions like that. And the guy that really helps me with my work is from Palm Springs. Says, you need to back up your product. You need to back up your work. And that's part of the reason that we did that show. And then we went from there to we did a Tucson show and the Herd Museum show and all that. It's a big, big difference. How much I have missed out, how much I owe to people. It's all part about making your amends, one of my biggest fears was meeting this guy at the Herd Museum in Phoenix was the guy that runs the gallery in Sedona, Blue Eye Gallery. And I knew for some reason that I was going to see him. I stood him up so many times. And he just kept telling me, says, why can't you just put that bottle down and just work? You don't even know how much you're hurting my business. We did a gold bracelet. He waited for me in Holbrook, Arizona for 10 hours. I had to sober up and drink a couple more before I could finish, and then I passed out and started working again. I finally made it to Holbrook, He was so pissed off at me, and I always remember that. And I went down there. I told him I'm sorry, but he just took the bracelet and didn't talk to me. So I just took it upon myself. So I'm not going to do this again. I'm not going to do no more art shows. I'm in the process of becoming who I really am. I need to sober up. I need to get to where I need to be. I need to get back in harmony and balance. I need to go and talk to the right people. Going back to my roots, it is part of that. I have a Native American sponsor. I have a good sponsor that has a lot of years of sobriety. And I had to do a lot of soul search, Where am I going to go from now? Where am I headed now? What's out there for me? What's left for me? At my age, I think about that. I'm still in good health, and that was so funny when I went for my, I haven't gone for a checkup for a very, very long time. And I went there, and I was like, oh, what is the doctor going to tell me? Am I diabetic or I have cancer or, I was dreading it. They took some blood samples from me, and I was to complain about my knee, and I was supposed to get a knee surgery. And before we do all of that, we had to take a bunch of tests and all that. And he came back in, and so okay, Mr. Harrison, so you must have been taking care of yourself really well. You're in very good health. I didn't want to tell him I was an alcoholic, And I was so glad, I was thankful for that. Thank God. I remember saying, thank God, And I said to myself, it's not too late to really start taking care of myself. And I was overweight for a very long period of time, and I got gout and all that, and that's what scared me. And then I noticed I was getting sick late in life to where I knew I wasn't going to make it health-wise. I knew if I got married in 2000, I know now it would have never lasted because I was still drinking. I've had my issues with the IRS, and I settled with them, and it's something that that I told them, that I don't know who these people were. They don't care, but that I was drinking. I'll take care of it and so forth. So, part of my experience is that is now I'm giving back. Now I'm giving back, and I got into this GSR thing, and I go to do my district meetings and all that. And when I was still taking my paper around for the court system, I went to a meeting over here at the Heights, and I said by the board there was a sign. There's a business district meeting every Saturday at 9:30. And that was District 12. I didn't know that. And my districts in the 11 were over in Taylor Ranch. So they pointed me at GSR, says, do you know where to go? I said, yeah, I know where to go. Says, just go over there, just write down, what we need to know. That's your job, provide us with information. So I went to the Heights and I sat there, got jot down notes, and we went through, see, what your group report and all that. Says, I'm so from Taylor Ranch and all that. Says, sir, you're in the wrong district. So now, so what's that? District 12. So you're in District 11. You're supposed to go on 4th and San Lorenzo. And I said, I'm sorry, I had nothing to report. When I went back to my meeting the following Monday, I thought it was funny. So, but it's real interesting now. How I work with with AA now. Was so like I said, I think we all know it's all voluntary. It's very, very fascinating for me. We do the assemblies and convention. The next one coming up is Las Cruces, and I'm pretty sure I'll be down there. And I got involved with the corrections and treatment and Bridge the Gap. And my message today is, that I may not have all the knowledge and all that, but to let you know that people like me can sober up. If I can make a difference in somebody's life out there. That's what I'm here for, is to carry the message, because I'm responsible. That's what we talk about in the Bridge the Gap, that Bill was saying, we need about 1,000 cards for all these correctionals and state penitentiaries and all that. Those coming out of the system, going back into a public life, we need to have contacts with people on the outside. So even if out of 1,000 cards, maybe we can save one soul, that still will make a big difference. That's part of my message here, is that, I may not be as powerful. I'm only a simple man, but I can make somebody a difference in somebody's life, And I'm very, very fascinated by the meetings. I go as much as I can, and every time I have a problems or I start feeling negative, I hit the meetings. I live very close to Brown Baggers, but my home group is, like I said, it's in Taylor Ranch, because I'm very, very comfortable there. And I don't want to end up like, who was the lady that talked here Friday? I forgot her name. July. She was saying, I still have 15 minutes to go. What am I going to talk about? I was saying I really don't want to end up like that. So, but that's where I came from. I've been involved with a lot of stuff. I played in a band from 1976 to 1981. We were very well known for our group in our area, and that's all we did. We played and we drank. I always look forward to leaving every Friday. We did the rodeos and we did the bar life, We traveled to Minnesota, South Dakota, Salt Lake. Back in '76 was the first time they had the International Finals Rodeo, and we played for that event. That's all we did. We drank. Instead of drinking, the drummer introduced me to golf back in 1979, and that's where I picked up golf. I made a good name for myself. Back in 1984, I went to the World Amateur Championship in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I did very well there. Then they got me a good job. I taught golf for 2 years at a small college, and that's how I got my boys. That's how I got them started in golf. Then I sponsored a girls basketball team, softball team, men's softball team, and I did sponsor a coach. That's all we did. We did it for the fun of it, and we did it because we drank. It was the hardest thing for us is, how are we going to get back? Because every one of us were drinking. We carpool, there were 5 or 6 of us following each other. That's all we did. And then aside from that, I did my jewelry. It was a full-time work for me. And I did a lot of art shows, and I was a member of the ICA group from Albuquerque here. I did a lot of shows on that. And I did a lot of group shows. I did a lot of 2-man shows, and with very well-known people, Senator Ben Nighthorse, people like that. Half the time I wasn't there. I always looked for a place where it was comfortable for me. Was the bar life. I did a show in Denver. I was there the morning, Saturday morning. I didn't come back until Sunday afternoon. It was over. My stuff was still there. Nobody watched it. And that's how bad I was. I did that at Adobe Wall Gallery. I don't know if it's still there or not in Houston. I did that show, and it didn't care how it went or who bought my work. It was just that I was there just to party. The only time I did well was when I did this show downtown Fort Worth. Is when at that time my wife went with me. That was the only time I behaved. And other than that, I wanted to go do this alone. And it was the addiction. I couldn't control that. I really didn't know how to control that. And I've made all sorts of excuses to drink. It didn't matter. It was Monday night, Tuesday night. It didn't matter the time of the year. I've always made an excuse to get away to drink. And I still think about that. Why did I do those things? I could have had a better life if I just maintained. And if I just, like they say, do it in moderation. I don't know what that meant. And people would tell me, that you drink too much. And they also tell me, you're a professional artist. Act like one. Act like one. But then I say, yeah, I'm a professional alcoholic too. And I did that. I think about, what if, I had a lot of opportunities to make a really, really good name for myself. I never done that. I never completed those things. My education was one of them. That was my biggest disappointment in my life. It's like I said, with my mom also. But friends, family, especially your closest one, your parents. Those are the ones that really stuck with me all these years. I don't know how many times I wasn't welcome because I always went home drinking. I always went home drinking. I was not welcome there. And I wasn't the only one. It was my older brother and I, the two of us, but he's sober up also. And I never thought I was ever going to sober up. But like I said, it was the drug court that made a big difference in my life. And they made me saw things from a different perspective. And I acknowledged them, says I'm not afraid to tell them that, I said, thank you for doing this for me, one of the days I went to court, I saw the police officer there. And I said, I don't hate you. Maybe this was good for me, I knew this was going to happen for me, It's a good thing that you stopped me. If I would have continued on, maybe I would have killed somebody, it's always in the back of your mind, maybe I would have killed myself or, injured somebody or taken somebody else's life, That's always the possibility. And he said, yeah, that's my job. And I says, I just don't want you to drink. It's bad. It's not good for you. We deal with this every day. And I thought about that, and I said, what am I going to do? And I think I cried most of the time that year because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I don't know where I was going to go, who I was going to be with. My fiance left me and stuff like that, and I just all that self-pity, all that anger, and I really didn't know what was going to happen to me. But on the 28th, like I said, the December, I got out of the program, and my biggest decision was my son wanted to go out and party for New Year's Eve, and another best decision I made says, nope, I'm going to stay home. I woke up nice, it was good. New Year's Day, sober, and I think there was beginning of something new for me. And I still did my meetings, but I drifted away. And I found myself, the fourth year of my sobriety, I started feeling pretty bad, all this negative feeling, that I said, you know what, I really don't want to relapse. I really don't want to go where I'm at, where I was before. I don't want that to happen to me again. And the first thing that came up in my mind was my sponsor and the meetings. So I went back, and that's when my sponsor was telling me, says, it's just one day at a time. Take a deep breath, one day at a time. Look, you have your boys, you have your family, you still have your life. put this all behind you. You've done it already. You've done the hardest part. Now he says, you got to keep it going. Keep it going. Pray. And that's one of the things I did. I started going back to church. And they say that God works in mysterious ways, and that is true. And I found myself praying. It says, do as thy will with me, whatever. It says, I'm here at your disposal now. It says, I'm in the world of confusion. What's going to happen to me? Where am I going to go? Am I going to make it? And I always remember that. And I started to notice things were taking place in my life. Changes in my life. Things were starting to go good in my life. I don't make as much jewelry anymore. I don't do that no more. Like I said, I didn't do art shows for a long time because I wasn't ready. Spiritually, mentally, I was not ready. And that's part of my sobriety is, I was preparing myself till I was ready. Now wasn't a good time to do that. And I had to make that decision. Can I do this? Am I ready to do this? And I think in a way my prayers are answered. And I always tell myself, so you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. One of the members always, he always makes me laugh when he says, I love myself. I look in the mirror, I love myself. And that person is here today. He always makes me crack up when he says that. So I've been doing that. Every time I look in the mirror, I don't have to look at the mirror and tell myself, God, my eyes are red, it's kind of yellow and all that, I'm, wow, they turn white, I can't believe that. How many years ago I've seen those white eyes, And it's a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful feeling. And to be associated with people that are always, they welcome you with open arms. That's one of the best things I found about the service work, about AA. I can walk into any doors now, not feel nervous, not be afraid and all that. And before, I didn't have the willpower. I didn't have what it takes because, like they say, alcohol is powerful, baffling and cunning. And I think the best word I heard was patience. It waits for you. It waits for you to make a mistake. How strong are you? How strong am I today? Do I have enough willpower? Do I have what it takes now? And part of that, that keep me going is, my prayers. I ask for nothing, no more, just protection, security. And I tell myself, it's like an insurance company. You're in good hands with AA, And so you're going to be okay, I always tell myself that. So, and just like my boys, I love them dearly. That's one of the things that it took me a longest time to tell them how much I love them face to face. I think in my heart they were waiting for that. They're waiting to hear that from me. Today I have a really strong relationship with my boys. I'm very, very proud of them. They know that what I put through with them wasn't good. But I'm very, very glad they're doing very, very well for themselves. So, and I had the a chance of meeting somebody else that making a big difference in my life, and that's my friend Adriana. And I could never ask for a better partner than her. Her love and support and understanding, keeps my faith, makes me stronger, keeps my faith good. I'm in good shape, keeps me on the right track, and doesn't complain when I go to the meetings with her. And she knows where I'm at. She knows what I was before and who I am today. Sober here. I can't believe that I'm sober today, and I thank you people for that. And you're the show in my life. You're what makes it possible for me. And to go back to where I was, I know I'm not going to make it. Not this late in life. I know I'm not going to make it. So this is where I want to be. And this is where I want to be. Like I said before, I go to meetings, because I want to. I go to meetings because I feel good. And when I get out of these meetings, I feel better. You cleanse yourself. Spiritually, mentally, everything about that. You feel good about yourself, and I'm glad I'm doing service work. I'm trying to reach out to people. Tell them, this that I was there. I was in one of you. I've done that before. I've done more than that before. I've been out on not literally on the streets, but I slept in the bushes outside the motel because I lost my key. And somebody had put a towel on the window. I just laid right there by the window till the motel opened up. So, and I thought about that, all the stuff that I went through. And one of the guys that heads the treatment facility, he asked me to run a meeting for him at La Posada House. I said, sure, I'll go down there. I'll run a meeting. So that's Friday night. So this is something that that I'm responsible for. I really don't have time to think about it. So well, maybe sure, I'll go. I went down there and we read in a book not too long ago. I think it was last week's meeting that if AA had its own way without any rules or it says something about the first floor would be all offices, second floor would be this, third floor would be like that or something like that. And I thought about that, and I went down to La Posada House, and I ran a meeting there, and we had like 6 guys in there, and they would not behave themselves. It's the first time I've been in a meeting like that. It's a halfway treatment facility there, so they're asking me so many questions, and I told them that do not reframe, do not crosstalk here in a meeting like this. They don't want to stop reading. I had to cut them off, and I had to, I was telling myself, I've never seen a bunch of 2 years old alcoholics here, They were on the phone, and they were texting, and, I think the one thing I like about that is, say, hey, buddy, so you're a counselor and stuff like that, But I went back and, things were a little different, So I told them, so these are, this is what the meetings are all about. You guys been here before, says, respect each other's sharing and all that, says, only read one paragraph and then, they're telling about war stories, what they did, about their love affairs and all that. And they were driving me crazy. I look at my watch and it says, oh, I've been only here like 10 minutes and I still have 15 minutes to go, But it's all part of service work, I never knew it was going to be like that. But, I enjoyed that. I went back down, like I said, the meeting went a little better because I was a little more in control then. It says, please don't be doing this. I would appreciate that, turn your cell phones off. You can do this, step outside and so forth. So, but the first time I did it was hard for me. But I'm glad to be here. I'm really glad to be here, and I hope you guys have gone through the same thing as I did. We all share the same problem here, alcoholism. I had no control of it. It is a disease. I've read about it, and that's one of the things that I've read early in my sobriety is that that people trying to sober up always go to different to buy books, and that's what I did. I went to Savers and Goodwill, and I bought a whole bunch of books from there about self-help, and I couldn't stop reading from there. So wow, this is very interesting. I never looked at it that way. And my friend was telling him, says, "You bringing more books?" So yeah, I know this. Has to do with how to enjoy life and all that. How your brain works, and stuff like that. And then I won a book last night on the raffle, so I brought another book home. So that only adds to my collection. So it's one of the things I did on my own. Is in order for me to sober up, in order for me to stay sober, this is something I need to do as a research. I need to know a little more about myself. Why I did that. Where what's going to happen to me now. I'm searching for answers. And if all things, if things are a little confusing, I'll always pray. And if I wouldn't have looked at the program, I think I would have been late today because we have church at 8:30. to 9:30 every Sunday night. Look at the program was up at 9:15. So that's one of the things that we do. We go to church, and it's always good. It's been very beneficial for me. Like I said, I come from a Christian family, even though my dad was very traditional. I'm sorry to say that I lost him a long time ago, But he did give my best friend an assignment, so take care of your younger brother. He's not well, I think he's going to go crazy, like Crazy Jimmy last night here. Another Crazy Jimmy here. So I ran, all I did is I ran. I was involved with a lot of things. It didn't matter. I almost lost my life, and that didn't stop me, And I ran off the road, and that didn't stop me. I've been in jail. That didn't stop me. I think the best time I had was in jail was up in Cortez area, a place called Ute Mountain. And we were on a drive up there, and we got pulled over, and we didn't want to get out of the car. I said, "There's no way we're getting out." And we had to stand out there for 10 minutes until it came down to 10 seconds. We're gonna bust all your windows. So we gave up, and they took us in, and we stayed in jail there for 3 nights. Monday, I didn't want to leave from there because God, he took care of us like we're at a 4-star hotel. Man, I couldn't believe the food, the company, the TV, and whatever he wanted to do in that jail was awesome. We had meatloaf, we had scrambled eggs, we had fresh baked bread and tortillas and fried bread, and 3 times a day, they tucked us in and stuff like that. Make sure we had fresh blankets. So I'm, they don't treat me like that at home. Says, "Can we just stay another night?" So we didn't have enough points for our hotel stay. Like you earn free nights or something. We didn't have that. So, but they gave us a chance. So you can just stay one more night. Don't worry about the fine. So, but they chased us out of there because we're eating all their food and all that. So. That was the best time I had in jail, so I always remember that. But I never didn't want to go back over there again. So, how many minutes do I have? Sorry. So anyway, I stand before you as a sober man, 8 years sober. I've done enough crying. Today I want to cry because I'm very happy. The joy that I have and the friends that I have. The hope for myself is different now. The challenge for me is a lot easier than before. The willpower, I leave it up to my higher power, And anything that is, it doesn't look, if it's not going to go too well, I always come back to the meetings, I enjoy my meetings. I love my meetings. And because of people like you, that has made a big difference in my life. At first I was afraid, but then, once you hit one meeting, then you go to the next one, as to how friendly the people are. If you come to Phoenix, if you come to San Diego, to LA, so you're more than welcome. We have meetings here. You can stay with us, and and that's one of the my sponsor who's here today. Made a very, very big difference in my life. So I think the best way he put it was, "You're somebody." I think I said this earlier. You're somebody's father. You're somebody's son. You're somebody's best friend. I never looked at it that way. You have a chance. To really make a difference in your life while you're still here. Make those changes. Make your amends. You still have time to do that. It was very, very difficult for me. To tell them I was crazy. I was stupid. I wasn't right. I was sick. I was an alcohol addict. And I believe, that this will only make my sobriety stronger. Like I said, I'm only sober for 8 years, but, this is a good experience for me. And I'm very thankful, for inviting me here, to tell you a little bit about my life and how bad I was and all that. And then you can make a difference in somebody else's life too. If not here, then the next meeting, or wherever it may be, whatever your journey takes you. I've done that, and I think about it every day now. Not a day goes by that I don't think about this. So I'm glad that I'm sober. I wake up in the morning, I have to worry about, where my wallet is, or who's next to me, or things like that, or what happened to me, or, whose clothes am I wearing and stuff like that. And, I end up with somebody's pants were all baggy one time. And I think they took my pants off. This was in a drunk tank. I walked out with the baggy pants one time and got out of Gallup. I didn't want to look down there, I don't know how dirty it was, but, that's what happened to me, And I did my own laundry there in Gallup. I spent 8 days in there. This when I was young. I was probably 19 years old. All due to drinking. They had so many charges against me. I had, false identity, things like that. Escape. I ran away, and they caught me again the same night, and it was all due to drinking. My family couldn't bail me out because I was under a different name. That's how I end up 8 days in there. And one of my older brother was saying, so we're looking for your photo on a milk carton. Missing, until I called home, but they charged me with a false identity then. So I was young and crazy. But drug court was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm glad, I was steered in the right direction from the very beginning. And with the 12 steps that I did through drug court and all that, the Bible, the church, and they scared me there, And I think all the accidents that we had here in New Mexico, all the DUIs, we have people that were taken, that wasn't the right thing to do. I blame myself for that, even though I'm not involved with that. I'm part of that problem, Maybe if I would have sobered up earlier, maybe I would have ran across those people somewhere to let them know that wasn't the right thing to do. But now, I'm here. I'm here, and I feel that, that I still have a lot more to do. I might not have all the knowledge, like I said, but, this is a beginning, a new beginning for me. And so maybe might be a new beginning for most of you here. And those who are here, it's very, very important for the old timers. I look up to them. They're like my fathers, my grandfathers, or my friends. They're family. And like Jim said last night, this is one world, one planet, one human being. And when I went to, I had the opportunity to go to the Middle East back in '86, I think it was '85. I went to Dubai for an international art, music, and food festival from all the desert countries in the world. That was a very, very beautiful opportunity for me to go there. And I met people, on the face-to-face level. We all are the same. We're no difference. They talk about, family. They talk about love. How can we get along? It's just the government that keeps us apart. Why can't we all get along? And that's one of the things I always remember when I went on this trip sober. Was I did a 1-hour presentation on the history of Native American Navajo jewelry. That was my job when I went over there. And a couple guys were very thirsty. We met with some Aborigines from Australia. They were thirsty. It's good to see the country didn't serve liquor there, which was good for them, But these are eye-opening experience for me. It's something that I was never able to do when I was in Paris. I just partied and that was it. Even I've been to the Eiffel Tower and all that, but that's all we did. And I was addicted. I was an alcoholic from the very beginning. And I remember my friend came back from the service when he was in Vietnam, and the first thing he asked me, he went to see me when I was still at UNM, was, "Are you an alcoholic?" So what's that? So, "Do you drink beer?" I said, "Yeah." "Then you're an alcoholic." "Oh, wow, that's cool." So, it's better than being called an asshole, It's just, let's go have a beer, I always thought about that. So you're an alcoholic, But I drank most of my life, and that wasn't the right thing to do. But that's the past. And I'm very, very honest with myself about where I'm at today. I talk about letdowns, and I talk about negativity and stuff like that. I had to be very honest with that. I had to be upfront with myself with that. So I always rely on prayers. That's one of my family always told me, you've been to church, you were baptized as a Christian. You know what it's like. You know where to go. It's just right around the corner. It's there. It's there for you. The churches are there in every cities. It doesn't have to be a certain religion. You pray into the same God. That's what we refer to in AA. As a higher power. And it don't matter where I'm at. I'm driving or playing golf or on travel. I'm very thankful. Especially in this day and age. With all the stuff that's going on. I still pray. Pray for those who are very unfortunate. I've been to Mexico. I've seen the conditions down there, and I try to help them as much as I can. When I was working with the churches, took stuff down there, and the best thing to do is pray for them. And I went to one of the meetings down there in Juarez, and God, their average month of sobriety is only 45 days. And I said, what? They have birthdays almost every week there. People coming in, they're what's that? That's one of the things that killed me there. Is wow, this is a lot of drinking going on there. But I'd like to thank Vincis for asking me to speak here today. And I'm very proud to be here. I'm very proud to tell you that I'm sober, and one day at a time does work. Have faith. There is hope. And I know from here we're headed to church. I'm all dressed up for 2 occasions at once, so I hope I can be a help. My my sharing will benefit some people. So, but don't be afraid. We have sponsors out there. There are a lot of people that are very helpful, and I'd like to wish you the best. And may God bless you wherever you go. Thank you very much. Okay.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs, long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.